There were so many little teasers for Ahsoka Season 2 that they would have been hard to spot unless you already knew them, and that is the Gods of Mortis, which was the statue that Lord Balin was stood upon. Dave Filoni had this to say: "The Mortis Gods was a concept created by George when we were working on Clone Wars, and he had us do this arc that basically dealt with Anakin being tested by these Force wielders, George called them, to see if he was this prophesized chosen one, which seemed to be a common prophecy among many different Force wielding groups. And they were the first creation by George of somebody other than a Jedi or Sith that could wield the Force and do it on an almost godlike level. So I've been working on a somewhat history of what they are really, and where they could have come from, and what all that meant back when we did Clone Wars, and then I resurrected it here in Rebels to tie things a bit together and make certain storylines possible. In an arc of Clone Wars with Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka, there are 3 Gods of Mortis, otherwise known as the Ones, which are the Father, the Daughter, and the Son. The Father's children are so powerful with that of the living Force that he intentionally isolated him in what looks like a prism called Mortis. One important disclaimer is that these 3 are not defined in the narrow confines of Jedi or Sith, and we simply call them Force users or Force wielders. The Father is the embodiment of what Jedi seek: balance. His main role for eons was keeping either of his 2 children from winning. His age is unknown, and while he is immortal, he is old by appearance, standing tall with a long white beard. He's a wise Force wielder who sought balance. His powers include the ability to hold a lightsaber blade with his bare hands, even making them retract. He could teleport, remove people's abilities to use their own Force powers, shapeshift to sprout wings, and he could even go into the minds of a person to remove memories, which saves Anakin later on. And of course, a Force push. But it's almost safe to say that all Force wielders have this, and to an extent, we don't actually know what he's fully capable of. Afraid of his children's abilities to use the Force so powerfully, he isolated them all for eons on a spiritual plane of Mortis in the remote Crelithium system. I believe that Peridia could be their original home. After all, these are godlike beings. Something that is worth noting is that Mortis seemed to enhance everyone's Force powers, because Anakin was able to subdue both the son and the daughter, reaffirming that he is in fact the chosen one. The only thing that confuses me is that because Anakin was able to subdue them, was he that strong, or did Mortis enhance him so he could keep up? After all, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka weren't possible the same thing. The daughter is the light side of the Force in its entirety. Standing tall with green hair, she lets out this light hue, almost emphasizing how no matter where she goes, there'll be light, both literally and in the Force. It appears she has no physical form, but chooses between being a human or a griffin. Much like the Father, she possesses the ability to absorb, deflect, reflect Force lightning. Ultimately, what makes her so different from her brother is her mindset. For example, she believes it was against her brother's nature to be dark, despite being the literal embodiment of the dark side. The son is much the same as the daughter, but with dark side powers. His shapeshifting is like a gargoyle instead of a griffin, a Sith red Force lightning, and he's able to give Anakin intense Force visions of the future, which undoubtedly breaks him. He sees through the lies of the Jedi. Both the son and the daughter are very similar in power, just at opposite ends of the scale. They possess the ability to imbue a person with their Force affinity, while the son can corrupt, the daughter can cleanse. The children aren't immortal in their own rights, but the father was, and he shared this power with them. How this works, I'm unsure, but knowing that balance is not attainable with the death of his daughter, he uses the Dagger of Mortis on himself, ultimately removing himself and his son from the picture, taking the prison paradise of Mortis with it. And it's worth noting that the Dagger of Mortis was the only thing that was really capable of killing them. Ultimately, they were a family of Force wielders who became more than their physical form, that represented balance in the universe. Had both the light, the dark, and someone in the middle to keep it all together. If they were in fact the first to use the Force, it wouldn't surprise me that they were seen as gods. These are mortal beings you can control without touching, shapeshift into beasts, and so much more. Since the addition of Rebels, we see a painting on a wall in the Lothal that depicts the Ones, and it serves as a gateway of the world between worlds. They must have had access to the entire galaxy. If they possibly came from Peridia, it shows how there is no limit in how far this world leads to. I highly doubt they climbed into a Purgil's mouth, for example. But to me, this makes their self-exile or isolation that much more impactful. If they were afraid of what these guys could do in the material plane, maybe what they're running away from, or at least the father has made them run away from, maybe that's what Balin is looking for. Balin's looking for the fountain. Oh my god. Anyway. That's ready for another time. What ways to be seen now with the appearance of the wands in Ahsoka as statues in Peridea. This could be their original home. The father was afraid of how powerful his children were, so did something happen here that made him leave? Did they create the world between worlds? Were they the first Force wielders? If I know Filoni, I think this exact conversation was planned for Season 2. How they'll do it without Ray Stevenson, rest in peace, I don't know. For me, he was by far the most interesting and well-played character I've seen in Star Wars for quite a while, and very quickly becoming one of my favourite villains, if you can even class him as that. In the expanded universe, there is the Mother, also known as the Abeloth, but this is something that is yet to be shown in canon. And you can find this in the novel series Fate of the Jedi, which I've just started to listen to on Audible, so I can learn even more about them. I will have hopefully read or listened to 9 of these books, and we have some time to burn between the next show. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I feel like Ahsoka had a very good level of nods to nerds like us and keeping new people informed. I would love to know what you guys think. What do you think's on Peridea? Is it the fountain from Fate of the Jedi? The source of the Abeloth? The source of the Force and all power? Is that there? Let me know what you think, because I am all the more interested. But more importantly, remember, Force will be with you. Always.